versus using leverage. So I guess for the audience that's watching, let's say they're like, all right, I want to get into the game. I want to get my feet wet. I want to buy maybe my first or second deal by myself. Then I go ahead and get with an investor, someone that's knowledgeable like Kris, because I kind of want to understand how to do it myself before I start getting involved with other people, which I tell people all the time, hey, man, buy at least one house by yourself, figure out the process, go to the closing table, figure it out, understand how to deal with real estate agents, etc. If someone wants to do this, what do you think is the first thing they should do if they want to get their first house?
If they're just trying to do a house for themselves and start with a little bit of like house hacking, like this is how I got started. It was like, okay, this is cool. This is a 3 or a 3.5% down payment. And so even though we talked about how much homes have gone up by, if I was a young single person, I would be racing to save up $10,000 to $15,000 in the bank. Whoa. When you come out of college, it's like, man, do not adjust to your lifestyle to that income. Like, live on the cheap, or else you don't have much of a hope in life financially. Because I want to be clear, like our millennials and our Gen Zers, they have it way worse when you compare it to Gen X or boomers.
They
like,
can't buy a home?
No, and not only that, but they get this bad rap that they're lazy. I'm like, no. They're way harder working. We can measure it. If you take a look, this is kind of crazy stat, Gen Zers, I got kids that are Gen Z. You compare them to baby boomers when they were in their 20s, and literally Gen Z has 85% less buying power than a boomer did in their 20s. Which basically means they have to work way harder for the same dollar, which means they got to work smarter. So here's what a lot of them are doing. They're still living at home. They're saving their money aggressively. They're saving $10,000 to $15,000, and that's a 3% down payment on a $300,000 to $400,000 home. Then go get 4 roommates, and then literally rent the house out to them. Take just a room for yourself. And then there's a means to actually have the mortgage even potentially fully covered by them. And it's like, okay, a house hacked. I worked hard. I came up with the 3%, and I've got someone else now actually making my payment. And then 12 months later, do it again. Move and do it again and house hack. And then, and if you could do it 3 or 4 times, you're getting away with murder with a 3% down payment, fully legally, doing that system. And where does that put you in 5 years? Dude, you own 4 or 5 homes. And now if they're going up, you know, if they're going up, let's just call it 5% a year. On a $400,000 home, that's 20 grand. I got 4 of them. That's $80,000 that I'm increasing every single year. You're probably not even making $80,000 a year, but now you are in real estate.
Yeah. Ooh. So, okay. So they capture their first home. They do what you did. Get the roommates, etc. Get it paid down. Now it's time to find the second home.
Yep.
What should they be looking for when they're looking at the home? Should they be looking at, okay, let's make sure the exterior is nice. Maybe it has some issues here. What should they be looking for when they're trying to pick up this second home as an investor? Yeah, like deal breakers to stay away from versus things that are good.
Before you actually look at the contents of the house, I actually would crunch the numbers. I would ask, where are rents per room in the areas where I'm buying? Because I want to add it up and be like, okay, I like my county allows me in this area to have up to 5 different residents. So I'm going to have 4 roommates, and I can't charge more than $500 a room. So I'm going to maybe pull in $1,800 to $2,000. What's my mortgage going to be? Okay, my mortgage is going to be $1,900. I broke even. That's smart. Hey, I wonder what happens if path of progress is over here. Homes are a little more expensive. I ran the numbers. Guess what? I'm going to pull in $2,400 a month, but my mortgage is only going to be $2,200. I actually have a positive cash flow of $200 a month while I'm living for free. So you got to be able to crunch the numbers and just ask, what will actually make the most money? Because you don't want to burden yourself with debt that you have to service. You want other people to service it for you.
Yeah. And this is like really simple, but like, guys, a calculator that's really good for this is like literally just go on Redfin. Like it's really basic and simple, but what I've realized is like with all my deals, I'll just use the Redfin calculator to see like what my monthly payment's gonna be and then how much the house generates. And if there's like a cash flow that I'm like happy with, a lot of the times by the time I close the deal and be done with it, it's pretty accurate with how much money I make. So that's really important to crunch the numbers. Now, what do you, Kris, in your opinion, what do you think they should be looking for as far as like a cash-on-cash return, which we discussed before, guys, which is, well, we can tell them what a cash-on-cash return is first and then what they should be looking for.
Let's just say for a moment that you were going to put up $12,000, like fresh, and that's your 3% down payment on a house. And then let's just say that after renting it out, there's $200 a month left over. And as long as you kept your, let's just say vacancies and everything was taken into account, that's $2,400 a year. So if I put up $12,000 and I make $2,400 a year, I can figure out exactly what my return is. Everyone should know how to calculate an ROI. You take your gain, which is $2,400 in this scenario. I'm going to divide it by my investment of $12,000, and then I'm going to times it by 100, and that tells me that I have a 20% cash on cash with my 3% down payment. Do I think you should look for a cash on cash on a home that you're going to live in? I don't think so. I would focus more on what do I want to put out and how much do I want to try to get back? Like my very first house, I didn't have necessarily roommates. It had a separate basement apartment. I rented out the basement and that covered the entire mortgage. So my wife and I lived upstairs for free.
Wow.
So, there was really good house hacking because a person's rent or their mortgage is the biggest expense you're ever going to have your entire life. If you can be smart and wipe that out in the beginning, then it's like you've removed the largest financial burden. What should you be doing with that extra money? You should buy a nicer car. Just kidding. You're supposed to save that money.
I'm about to say.
Yeah. You're supposed to save that money, and you're not, by the way, you're not saving it for a 401k. You're saving it to invest. So now you can buy, so cash on cash, I think, becomes more important when you start buying non-owner occupied real estate, meaning I'm buying homes. Investment properties. Like, okay, now I'm not living there. It's less confusing. My optics are cleaner. How much money am I going to make? How much money do I want to make on that house? So for me, right now we're in a scenario where rates are high. And rates are scheduled to come down. And if they can get a handle on inflation, let's just say in the next 12 to 24 months that rates come down 2 or 3 points like they're hoping. Mm-hmm. If that happens, cash flows are going to be booming because rents have not been catching up as fast as prices have gone up in the last 2 years. So we're in a really weird season of crunch, which is not what we'll see for the next 20 years. It's like the next 2 years are going to be funky because rates are high, which means cash flow's pinched, but rents haven't caught up yet. And so we've got this gap. Yeah. So I might have a property today where I'm like, ooh, I'm getting like a 1% cash on cash. It's like $100 a month. That's not exciting. But in 2 years, when everything evens out, it returns to a 4.5% cash on cash, which is actually, that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah. And I think it's very important for the audience to understand, like, if you guys buy your first house and you're living in it, right, you might make little to no cash, but like you said before, you live in it and you're living for free. If you're living for free, that's a W. If you're making a little bit of profit, that's an even bigger W.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, when I did the strategy that you just mentioned before, my rent was, I believe we're at All Spot, $1,200, right? So I got a property. And I had 3 units. I lived in one, rented the other 2. At that point, they covered the mortgage. Yeah. I lived rent free. So the $1,200 I was spending for rent, guess what I did with it?
You were to save it.
Saved it.
And buy something else.
Exactly. But also, I was somewhat house poor. So the money I had saved, I used to fix like repairs for the property, all stuff like that. But imagine if I had to do repairs.
Yeah.
What could I do with that money? So you're right.
I think when I got into real estate in the beginning, I was like, I have to buy junky homes and I have to fix them up. And then I remember after doing that for a few years, I found this really sick deal that didn't need any repairing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just saved like 10, 20 grand in repairs. That my ROI is going to be really big. And I thought, I just got lucky. And that's when I learned, it's like, wait, actually just raise your standards. Those houses are available.
Yeah, turnkeys are available, and I like them better personally.
Yeah, well, almost everything I do now these days is turnkey. Nice. And if it needs $20,000 or $50,000 of repairs, I put that on the investor, not me, saying, hey, you take that risk and then bring it to my buy box, and then if it still fits, then I'll buy it.
Yeah. Okay. And for the audience, guys, a turnkey property is basically a property that you buy it, it's ready to go. Like, you don't got to do no fixes, whatever. A lot of people like to fix and flip and whatever. You don't deal with none of that crap. It's pretty much ready to go. Renter ready. Maybe you do a little bit of painting or whatever, but it's right there. Or there's tenants in it already paying rent.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of comments coming through where people are like, Kris, can I mentor with you? Can I partner with you? And there are links provided where you can look at that. Even if you're just brand new starting out, yes, I can be your mentor. I can guide you in doing this on your own. Or if you're one of those that are like, hey, don't teach me to fish, bro. Give me a fish. Like, I think we live in a day and age where you have to decide. You can't do everything on your own anymore.
You can't, no.
You can't lone wolf it. And so you got to be smart and you got to ask, okay, with the limited resources I have, what should I do? And then when do I need to hire it out or bring someone else into my world? And partnering, when I got started, my original partner was my father-in-law. He was so skeptical. When I bought my first house, I was just in college, and he's like, why are you buying a house? That doesn't make any sense. I bought my second house. He's like, are you guys getting divorced? Like, he was so confused. About my third house, he's like, he wrote me off. He's like, you crazy. But after those 3 houses, I got this weird phone call 6 months later where he's like, hey, like, what are you doing in real estate? He started asking me questions. I could tell he was calculating my ROI. So I just revealed all my numbers, and he's like, oh my gosh, do you know what kind of ROI you're producing? I'm like, yeah. I was like, this is a lot better than my 401k or IRA. I was like, yeah. He's like, well, what are you doing? I said, well, it's weird that you're calling because I just found a 4th deal. I want to buy it. I need 20 grand. I don't have the money. He said, I'll give you the money, but can we partner 50-50? And I did not have to think about that because I was so poor. I'm like,
yes,
you come up with the money, and then I only have to give you half of the return. And I tried not to sound excited, so I was like, I think I'd consider that. But I was like jumping out of my skin.
Yeah, of course.
And we did 50 homes together millions of dollars in real estate. Wow. And that's when I learned the power of, because there's a lot of people listening like, well, what if I don't have the money? What if I don't have the credit? The biggest asset that you have is learning how to be resourceful. You should not take advice from your credit score. You should not take advice from your bank account, because when your credit sucks or you don't have money, you're like, well, I guess I don't have opportunity. I'm like, no, that's part of this. It takes money to make money mindset. You want to gravitate to a different game, a different mindset that says, well, I can find the resources. And so I started doing that for other people. Now they find me and they're like, hey, I don't know how to do what you know how to do in real estate, but I've got some 401k. Can we work together?
That's why it's important to go outside, meet people, make connections, go to events, because even my realtor that helped me with this first property, right? I met him at Toastmasters.
Yeah.
I didn't even know who he was until I met him there. But then again, being resourceful, finding out ways to make money is very important.
Yeah, and Tony Robbins, years ago, I was in one of his Lions Club. You'd pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through that whole system. And I was sitting there at his house, and I'll never forget when he said this. He said, you're one person away from lifetimes of income.
True.
And I think about all the money I've made in my lifetime, and I'm like, yup. A handful of mentors unlocked all of the doors of possibility for me. So everyone's got to be out there thinking, okay, you either subscribe to go to college, which I think is a broken system. You either think I'm just going to read books. That's never going to get you where you want to go. I've never found a system that is more efficient and better than, just go find someone that's already done it. And if you can find an arrangement with them to learn from them, there will never be a faster way to the top of the mountain. That's like doing Everest, where people die. And it's like, do you really want to climb the mountain with a Sherpa in their first year that has no track record, or the dude that's been up 200 times and has never lost someone? Go find the smartest, brightest, most successful person that's relevant, and then figure out how to grab onto their coattails. Grab a tiger by the tail, and then let them carry you up the mountain. That's what I did. I feel grateful for the people that carried me to the top.
Well said.
So you mentioned earlier that you're very particular about where you buy.
Yeah.
There's 5 markets that you're buying in. Can you tell us some of these markets?
I can.
You mentioned Orlando earlier.
Well, can I start by telling you the places where I would never invest ever again?
Please, go ahead.
When I went nationwide for the first time, this was like 2009. This is right after Fannie and Freddie they were getting foreclosures like crazy. And I got access to a tape of 187 homes that they were going to sell me at a 92% discount. These homes were in Ohio, so we're talking about Cleveland, and then also in Michigan, in Detroit. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I get a home at a 92%, imagine for a moment buying like $150,000 entry-level home for like $9,000.
Yeah.
You're thinking, this is amazing. So I went in, I bought all these homes, I raised capital to do it, and then I fixed them up, I took them to market, and then disaster struck. Renters would move in, they would literally pay me their first month's rent deposit, and then they would never do anything again. These were professional renters. They would strip everything out of the house, take everything, pipes, copper, and leave, and then I had to refix them up again.
Wow.
And I lost $1 million trying to escape my 92% discount on 180 whatever homes. Well, I'm glad that I didn't give up. Fortunately, I was resilient, and I went back to the market, and I said, okay, play the game different. Don't go to blue states. Like, go where they have a surplus of beautiful homes. And that's when I developed a system for basically finding these markets that have really high performance. And because what I'm about to suggest, when I reveal what these markets are, it's not about a good deal on a house, it's actually about a good market. In other words, the secret to my ROI, over half of that 60%, comes from macroeconomics. It's a study of population, migration, the economy in those local markets, the companies that are moving in, jobs, like, for example, Blue Oval City. Let's talk about Blue Oval City. You guys should all Google that so you know exactly what that is. Okay. Ford, it says, we're building an electric plant. It's $11 billion. We're going to create 11,000 jobs for the plant, and they don't have real estate in that area. So what happens? Then you're going to need thousands more jobs for diners and new restaurants and everything else. Oh, yeah. And I'm buying these brand new houses turnkey for $180,000 that I'm projecting in the next 5 years are going to be worth $340,000. Well, that market won't last forever. I'm going to be there for the boom, and when everything is still taking off, I'm going to pull out, but I'm going to have some of my greatest wins. Those are the markets that I actually look for. So we're talking about Orlando. That's a great growth market. Memphis, Tennessee is a second market.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's outskirts and areas of Memphis where I'm getting some of my highest cash on cash. Look up Jonesboro. I shouldn't even say that one. That is the market where my cash on cashes are like between 4 and 7%. Like we are in a market where it's hard to beat 1 or 2% cash on cash. We are slaying it in those markets. So Alabama is definitely a market that you want to look to. Oklahoma is another market that you want to look to. Those are the markets that I'm in, and we're basically we're
any particular cities, or are we just going like the whole state is good?
No, not the whole state.
Okay,
no.
Oklahoma. So
no. So when you start with so talk about Oklahoma City. So Oklahoma,
okay.
We go to Oklahoma City, and then in Oklahoma City, then you have to say, well, where's the path of progress? What side of the railroad tracks do I want to be on? And then I only buy in certain zip codes.
Okay.
And then I focus in on an age range of home. And so I get super, super micro within that zip code down to the neighborhoods. And now I actually say, now I'm willing to entertain properties in my buy box. And the majority of homes that we find there, I don't even want.
And
so
I think it's
literally sifting everything.
For the audience, because that's like a really good strategy. Because for the audience, guys, when it comes to residential real estate, it's heavily dependent upon comps. So if the area has homes that are a certain price point, et cetera, like that sold in the past year or so, whatever was sold is typically what's going to be the general thing. Because like with residential, it's like comps mean almost everything. So even if you trick out the house and make it super nice, they're still going to put it.
If your neighbors aren't doing it,
if your neighbors aren't doing it, it's not going to work. So what are